wobble through this. Right then, what can I say about 2021? I came to this party in this little group a bit later than everybody else, didn't I? Because it was only September. It sounds like that song, Late September, Deck in '63. Anyway, but it was September. If I said I'll do challenges first, and then I'll do the good stuff after the challenges. I think this year for me, because obviously I've been around property for a while, and I've been in business for a long time. This year for me has really been about just, I would say the word discernment is probably a good word, is reflecting on kind of what I really wanted to do with my time and my talent, and the things that I'm really passionate about. So if I say I was kind of coasting along in my business, I don't mean I was coasting lazily. I mean, I was just in a place that I'm comfortable with. You know, my hubby was diagnosed with cancer 4 years ago, and it changed my perspective largely on life. It really, really did. I don't take for granted that, you know, not just the COVID thing, that we might not get another day, and none of us know how long we're going to be on this earth. And it gave me maybe more of a realization, not just in the last 4 years, but every single year. So, you know, this year, you know, I've always had the privilege of working with some really amazing people, but I did a talk earlier on this year, and it was actually, I called it Pivotal Moments and the Power of Connection. And I think this year for me has been a bit like what Simon and Christy have just said, and what Bryn has said. It has been a series of real pivotal moments for me. And some of the challenges this year hasn't necessarily been, you know, big personal, deep rooted challenges, although we all have them. It's been about what is it in the context of how many brilliant people that I know and how many great opportunities are out there, is which ones are the ones that I can bring the best version of me to. And, you know, and I say, like everybody else, being someone who owns properties, you know, we had some challenges this year with tenants not paying. I was coming out at the start of this year from a business relationship that I'd invested 6 years of my life in. And, you know, only to be left kind of holding the baby, shall I say, when I was hoping that this was someone I could rely on. And when you go through that, it sometimes makes you wary to go out there and do stuff again. But I'm a great believer in that learning bit, that, you know, you decide, okay, what do I take from this? And what I really, really, really want to do. And so there's a couple of people in this panel, but if I stick to the panel first and kind of how I end up here, pivotal moment thing for me came around because someone asked me, I think it was a Blue Bricks magazine article that I was asked to do on repossessions, because someone had heard me speak about that particular subject. And I think because of that, I was recommended to Claire. And here we go. We're just going to do this kind of, it's almost like, you know, what was that game that you used to do, the grids, and you walked, anyway, can't remember what it's called. But it was one of those, it was a series of, how did I end up here? I'm not quite sure, but actually I know how I ended up here. And it literally was pivotal moments in the power of connection. And so I started part of this year with the challenge of, what do I really want to do? What do I really want to be? What do I really want to invest, you know, however long left I have on this planet in. And the theme that kept coming up for me was a theme that I never heard anybody talking about, and I started talking about repossessions. I've been in that situation myself. I've had, in spite of my experience as a mental health specialist, I've had my own mental health challenges. And I wanted to tell that story. And I got an opportunity to tell that story, which Claire then heard and asked me to do a presentation here. And it wasn't just a story of how people lose their homes. It was a story of how I almost lost mine, and where that took me to. And because of some of the questions in this group, and this is the thing, so pivotal moments isn't just about meeting the right people at the right time. It's sometimes someone asking you that key fundamental question. And it was Bryn, I will never forget this, that Bryn said to me, so what would you like to do? And I said, I'd like to be the bank. Not for me personally, not for me to be the bank and make money, but I'd like to be in a position where I could actually maximize how many people that were financially challenged, that were facing losing their homes, who might well end up being the people that Christy and Simon need to rehome, you know, that I would like to be in a position where we could do more of that. Because me just doing these on my own is a tiny, tiny, tiny dent in the universe. A dent by all intents and purposes, but a tiny dent. And there's probably more we could do. And because Claire asked me to come here, and Bryn heard that story, and heard my story told in my way, even though I was crying at the same time, and sometimes I still do when I recant my own story. And as a result of that, the biggest win of the year came literally in the last 3 months. And that was, I realized that I wasn't the only one who cared about this stuff. You know, and it's not that I don't think there are people out there who don't care, but I came to this group purely to tell the story, purely to appeal to the fact that there are investors out there, there are guys in this world who genuinely, like Christy and Simon, like Bryn and Claire, like everybody's here, who genuinely care, not just about profit, but about people. Because we know if we care for people, there is profit in the caring. There is profit, and not just for ourselves, but for everybody. And for me, the biggest win came as a result of that presentation that night. Because suddenly I had a belief. I had a belief that there was more than me that cared. And it wasn't just the belief there was more than me that cared. It was also the realization that people who could help raise that agenda, people who could connect with that agenda, were actually sat here in this room at this time. And I went away that night and I thought, holy shit, what just happened here? What? And so I'm wrapping all these together because the learning, everything came from that moment. Everything from September came from that moment. People who were asking me to talk more about the subject, people who were asking me about burnout, because I was saying the reason I was where I was because I was burnt out. I'd burnt myself out to the point almost of oblivion, and that I could identify with millions of people out there. And because I had a lovely conversation then with Bryn and James, and they said, well, we could do this. We could do this. And I realized the connection with what Christy and Simon were doing with their REIT, that it wasn't in any way competitive, because some of the people that we will help with the REIT that we want to set up will actually end up in social housing anyway. They'll end up at the other end of the spectrum so they can start again. And that in actual fact, the power of connection and collaboration is the greatest force for good I think this world could ever have. And you know, so I'm kind of lumping my whole learnings together. And literally in the last 3 months of this year, I've had the biggest shift in focus, the biggest shift in challenge, and like Simon said, the idea of setting up a REIT and raising money and getting the properties and knowing how to buy a property, knowing how to negotiate good deals, knowing how to do that. Those bits are easy. The idea of the REIT, Bryn knows, I sat with him and James and I went, holy shit, you know, this, like, you're talking numbers that a girl from East Belfast would never even dream of. But because of the belief, because of the faith in this room, you know, I know that we can do it. You know, we're behind, you know, where Christy and Simon are at. Yeah, we're not there yet, but we're shortly to get there. But I know that 2022 is going to be made of the same connections and the same positivity and the same intention to go out and do more good in the world. And I think that is a great story, not just to come from this group, but because it's come from this group, it has even more meaning for me, because a small group of people can do massively huge, amazing things. And there's just a couple of other things. So next year for me, my learning is speak up and tell your story. You know, speak up, even if your story is painful, if your story has belief and intention, and genuine. I hate to use the word authentic, but genuinely is coming from that good place. You only need one really good person to hear that story and connect with it for some amazing things to happen. And so don't be ashamed or afraid to turn up to a network and say, hey, this is something I'd love to be able to do. I'm not really sure how to make this happen. and I might need some help. You know, never be afraid to be that person. You know, ask. And I didn't even know how to ask. I wasn't really asking, but someone said, hey, why don't you do it? I went, okay, let's do that then. I'm kind of that kind of girl anyway. So for 2022, for me, if I could sum 2022 up, even though we're not there yet, for me it would be this, and I've got a couple of words that are really my focus for the year: collaboration and connection. And it's been said before already, but collaboration and connection, more of that, because that really is a force for changing the world. But within that, there are a few things that I think are really key. And Tina's here, and I'm really, really pleased that Tina's been asked to join the panel as well, because Tina and I have kicked around an outline for helping sourcers to become more professional. And it's all about trust, it's about confidence, and it's about building, you know, those standards that we know we can rely on. And so my two main projects, and I have sacked off almost all other areas of work to concentrate on these two things next year: the REIT and the stuff that we're doing with repossession rescue. And it ties beautifully in with the stuff that Tina and I want to do, which is about raising the standards of sourcing through having a qualification. Now, you know, we're working on the outline of that, and we have been, but we need to up that agenda now. And as regards everything else, the discernment is that those are the only two things. Those are the two things that I'm going to be working on next year. And they fit beautifully into what we want to do, which is find more quality properties, bring on sourcers who actually really know what they're doing and know how to find them, which will enable us to fulfill the needs of the Real Estate Investment Trust and what we're trying to do with repossession rescue. And it happened because of me telling a story in this group.
Brilliant.
Thank you, Peter.